Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're from. Welcome to another Live and Real with System 1357 and the book, The 5 Systems of Successful People. So I'm Scotty Schindler, and today I have with me Terry Bean and Matt Baxter, and we're going to be talking about some people's favorite system in the book, and that's the Rule of 100. And that's the first 100 seconds, the first 100 minutes, first 100 hours, first 100 days, first 100 weeks, first 100 months. And that's a checkpoint system that you can use in your business. And when I spoke to Terry about today's session, he said, we've got to get Matt on. And I read through Matt's profile. It's awesome. So without any further ado, I'll pass you over to Terry, and Terry can do an introduction of Matt. Over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Scotty. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're having a wonderful day so far as we wrap up over here in the stateside. I know you guys are just getting rocking over there. So, it's fun. I'm excited to be talking to Matt Baxter because Matt and I have been threatening to get on one of these, either on my podcast or on his podcast for, I don't know, maybe 2.5 years. You don't want to rush into certain things. So we're definitely at about the 100-week mark in terms of getting some checkpoints done. But Matt's an amazing entrepreneur. He was first introduced to me by a longtime friend. She was on his show and said, "You two have to connect." And so the first time I chatted with Matt, you could just feel the energy coming over the phone. He was working on a couple of cool projects, and I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about his aiding the toilet seat project, but we're going to definitely jump into Wedge HR because he is sincere about not only untangling the hiring knot, but he's fixing and revolutionizing the hiring process for both companies and candidates. So, serial entrepreneur starting at 15 years old and still kicking it. I don't know, at least a couple years after that. Welcome, Matt Baxter. How you doing, man?
Oh man, with an intro like that, I can't get much better. So thank you very much for having me. Obviously, I think the 2.5 years was more grooming, so we had the right context down. We didn't want to rush into anything. So it's glad to be here, Scotty. I'm fired up. Thanks for hosting. So this will be good. We're ready to rock.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. So I wanna kind of jump back. Talk to us about when the idea for Wedge HR came to you versus when somebody first was able to use Wedge HR and then where you are today. So can you just timeline that out for us? I want to see how it holds up to the 100 days.
You got it. So like any true HR tech idea, it started from mowing lawns, kind of a natural career transition, right? So I mowed some lawns back in the day. I had a little landscaping company. When I hired for my lawn care, I didn't really care if somebody knew how to mow a lawn or weed whack. I cared, do you have the experience or the social skills to chat with somebody? Can you shake somebody's hand? Can I put you in front of my customers? So in 2015, I had a chance to sell my lawn care company. Super fun opportunity. Definitely not a big tech exit by any means, but it was a cool opportunity to go through. And I had about a week downtime where my dad and I actually took a road trip out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And one of the things we were talking about was what made that business successful. Well, one of the things I did pretty well is I hired well. And I kept talking to all these different business owners, and everybody said the same thing. Hiring sucks. Finding people's hard. It's just a huge challenge, right? And so the idea for Wedge came from, is there an opportunity to solve this? And on the flip side, as a college student, I was talking to all my friends and all of them said the same thing. Like, I don't have the 3 to 5 years experience that they're looking for to put on a resume. I don't have the opportunity to kind of showcase who I am as a person. So the original idea was back in 2015, idea in a napkin, if you will. I then basically started to pitch that idea at the college that I went to. And I did a pitch, one of the typical startup pitch contests, and somebody comes beelining over to me. And they said, I got the perfect customer. And it happened to be a massive staffing company owner in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That was our first client. So 2015 idea, if you will. 2017, you could say we beta tested or sort of kind of beta launched the product. 2018 is when we first got paid by a customer. Remarkable experience. It's nice when you actually build something and they pay you for it. It's awesome how that works. And then fast forward to today, we've got 15 employees. We've raised just under $5 million in capital. Any given week, we've got 3,000 to 5,000 candidates going through our product across 250 customers. So it's a fun. We've got some cool brands out there that we're working with, and the joys of a tech startup, from landscaping to HR tech. Like I said, typical transition. So I don't know if that fits the 100-day principle, but that's that's the background.
Well, I mean, in a couple of ways, it kind of did, right? About 100 weeks between when you first thought about it to when you could first talk about it, and then really another 100 weeks or so between the time that you said it to somebody and the time you sold it to somebody, right?
Yep.
So the math kind of holds true. That's fascinating to me. And so, based on what I know about you and your background, you're telling us that Wedge HR isn't quite as big as the lawn care company yet in terms of employees. Is that what I'm hearing?
So my lawn care at the height, I had 7 full-time employees. And I think through the years, I probably hired 25. Today, we've got about 15 full-time employees. So we're almost double in size with Wedge. Now, it's a little different raising capital versus bootstrapping, mowing lawns sort of thing. So it kind of helps add some juices. But I got to double check. We've got somebody starting on Monday, and I think this is the 50th person I've hired through the years, which is kind of a cool milestone. So half of 100. Half of 100.
Half 100, man. That's actually amazing. And my apologies, because in my background, in my extensive research, which is, when I read your LinkedIn profile, it said 25 employees. I didn't really think of it as an aggregate. I thought maybe it was the number at the size. So
no apologies needed. No, you're good. We just actually hired some people recently too, so your numbers are even. It's all live stream, so all good.
I love it, and that's the best part about doing these lives is I can say dumb stuff, and then it's like there forever. Not edited,
I was about to say you're in good company when I'm on here for saying dumb stuff, so we're all good.
I like that, man. I appreciate that. We'll make each other look smarter if that's remotely possible. So I like the idea of seeing a problem and then figuring out how to solve the problem. What made you think that video was the way to solve a hiring issue?
Yeah, I wish I could say that there was a more glamorous sort of connecting of the dots. Through the years, I've sort of evolved. One of my mission statements, or something I want to live by, is that I believe every single person has a story, and those stories are worth telling. And so when you think about job applications, a resume is about 150 or 200 years old, and we haven't made any updates yet. Every single person at some point in their life probably had a resume or looked at a resume, right? And we haven't changed that at all. And when you think about companies out there that are saying, it's like 75 or 80% of job descriptions include culture fit, or we want to hire for empathy. Yet the very first thing you look at is, does this person have 3 to 5 years and a 4.0 GPA? There's nothing about who that person is. And so I think the connection, you think about a picture's worth 1,000 words. What's a video worth, right? So when you think about the implications of, I want to get to know who somebody is on a single sheet of paper like a resume, that you're missing so much of the point of who that person is. And so video, I think, is an amazing, powerful tool to be able to leverage who somebody is, how they communicate, get to know them deeper. And so there's a lot of implications of the power of video, but that's part of it. So.
I love that. And there's a really powerful first impression when you see somebody come across video, good, bad, or possibly indifferent, but it's usually going to be good or bad. So I'm curious, how long, when you're telling a candidate to make a video and upload it to wedgehr.com, how long are those videos typically? What's the length of it?
Yeah, I think I was actually just looking at these numbers last week. I think our average video, so I'll give context to this, but is right around 4 to 4.5 minutes. Now, with that being said, companies typically ask somewhere between 3 and 5 questions. So let's assume that it's 4 questions, 5 questions. That means the average response per question is about a minute, right around that area. One thing that we like to do, so if I was applying for a job, you want to see how well I do on the fly, right? Because I'm pitching, I'm raising capital, I'm selling. You need to know how quickly I can respond sort of on the fly. We try to, for a lot of roles, we allow retakes, right? So it allows the candidate to get a little bit calmer of a process. They can, if they mess up or whatever happens, if they don't like their answer, they can go back and do it again. So that's something that we like to kind of encourage. Now, companies can obviously choose that, but all around, typically videos are about 4 to 5 minutes long. sort of short, sweet, if you will, but at least enough in depth that somebody has a chance to answer questions.
You know what? On the flip side, I'm curious. Do you find that the hiring company watches the length of time? Is it the full watch rate, or do you have stats on that? And you may be revealing too much, and I don't know.
No. It's all good. It's a good question. I think for the candidates that get hired or at least get interviewed, they watch more of the video. I think the knockout ones, for whatever reason, you're going to knock out pretty quick, right? Unless somebody's like, hey, quick 1 minute, rock star, let's bring him in. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to the role. Are you looking to fill a front end worker at a fast food restaurant, or are you looking to hire a sales manager? And I think there's a little bit of differences and nuance. In both. So
love it. And that makes perfect sense to me. It's wild to me because I think about that first impression piece, right? And do you do any coaching in terms of what a candidate should do, or is it kind of they're on their own in that respect?
Yeah, we certainly have tons of tips and tricks and resources for candidates at their disposal that they can go through. We as a service will partner with companies that do a lot of coaching, interview prep, resume prep, stuff like that. We offer that as kind of a outsource to some of our great partners. But as far as like a candidate gets a lot of in-depth opportunity to practice, to go through it, to make sure their lighting's right, audio's right, that whole thing.
I love it. It's interesting to me because you think about what you do from the candidate side is, I think, absolutely revolutionary, right? Because candidates are allowed to put their best foot forward. They're not having to worry about their resume getting trapped in ATS hell, right? Applicant tracking system. They didn't have enough keywords, so no human.
We need to get you on the sales team, by the way.
What's that?
I said we need to get you on the sales team when you start talking like that.
Yeah, right. But it's so important that candidates can be seen, candidates can be heard, candidates can be understood. Now, from the hiring side, I think it's so great because you're looking like literally at the person. You're hearing them, you're sensing them, you're feeling their energy, and I understand that some people come across on video better than others, and I get all that. That being said, are you getting better feedback from the candidates or from the hiring managers that are using your system?
So one thing that it's easy to say, it's harder to do, but we certainly pitch this as a differentiator. But one of the coolest parts about my job is that we get so often candidates will reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I just went through a wedge. And that was actually one of the coolest experiences that I've went through when applying for a job. So I get hundreds a month now, which is like, seriously, it gives kind of chills. And every single time I get one, it's the coolest thing. Because at the end of the day, how we try to differentiate ourselves and at least claim is we want to make a remarkable candidate experience. But that only goes as far as a candidate until they have a bad experience, right? So from everything, and that's where our team, and this is where I have to give all kudos to my team, and I deserve none of the credit, is they've obsessed over the user experience of just how many clicks does it take? How few of them can you take? Does it actually make you feel like it looks good versus does it just say that it's going to make you put your best foot forward? And so that's where our team is absolutely phenomenal about making a great candidate experience. And so we put a lot of focus and energy on that. But again, like I said, the coolest thing in the world is get a candidate that reached out and said, I just went through one of those. That was actually really good. Thanks. I mean, makes my day.
That's awesome. I can appreciate like you can feel or you can sense or you're getting feedback on the impact you're making. And that's really cool. We're talking with Matt Baxter of Wedge HR. We are going to talk about the rule of 100. I promise we're going to get to that too, because there are some checkpoints that have to go along with what they're doing, right? So, Matt came up with this really cool system that allows for video interviews, for hiring managers to be able to literally look and hear the candidate instead of looking at a resume. So when you first started this endeavor, right, did you look at some timelines and say, hey, if this thing is going to pick up steam and go, I'm all in. But if it doesn't start gaining some traction by X date, I might have to find something different, or were you all chips in no matter what?
I think I was pretty much all chips in quickly. I've certainly sent some mental milestones through the years, and that's a little more stress dependent than anything. Of like, man, if this doesn't reach XYZ, we gotta change something. But I have been remarkably fortunate that kind of there's been people that have come into my life that have sort of helped at different pivotal moments to sort of push me over the edge to the next level. Terry, you certainly would be one in some of the introductions that you've made, but probably one of the biggest key ones was early on when I had this idea. Again, I came from lawn care, mowing lawns. Like once you make enough money, you buy another mower so you can mow twice as many lawns, sort of logic. To an alumni from the college that I went to was a big startup investor, and I didn't know this the first time I talked to him, but I said, "Here's my idea. This is what I'm trying to do." And he said, "Well, I'm happy to invest 50 grand to get you going." And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. And so that was certainly an interesting jump that I mean, think about the education from not having any startup background to somebody saying, "I will give you money to launch this." That was, I got very fortunate. And I can't say how fortunate I was to be in that position, but I think, every single step of the way, there's been milestones. We have to do XYZ. We have to reach this. We have to hit our revenue to this. We have to bring on new team members to that. We have to bring on new partners. I certainly have adopted that much more methodical approach now, partly because I have to, right, in my role, but also I'm not just doing this to endorse the book. I truly find that every successful person, that's what they do. I think they have some form of milestone around whether it's you first got introduced to somebody and just a follow-up cadence. I'll give probably one of the coolest stories, and this is actually manifesting now, but one of the very first people that I pitched the idea for Wedge to was a massive healthcare company. And we were, knowing what I know now, we were way too early for me to even have a conversation with this guy, let alone for me to come in and say, "Hey, I've got this idea. Will you be a customer of mine?" 5 years later, and I've kind of kept up with him about once a year, if not twice a year, right? So we'll figure out the math of how that fits into a 100 and some sequence. But now we're to the point where he's taken over a huge healthcare provider. We're partnering together, we're working together, and he's actually going to help us get our next investment round over the hump because of his endorsement as a customer. And so that was 5 years ago that I first pitched the idea that I didn't even have any right to pitch to him or talk to him. Now he's becoming probably one of our most fruitful customers. And so that's something that I think the follow-up is one of the most remarkable, and the follow-up for the intention of not just getting the business, but building the relationship continuously, I think is one of the most important things. So that was not a cheap plug, and I'm not paid to say that, but I wish, so sort of thing.
I love it. There's a recurring theme with entrepreneurs that are successful, and that recurring theme is they were too dumb to know they couldn't do it. Right? They just didn't know that wasn't supposed to be the thing. Yep. We were talking the other day about stop overthinking and start overdoing. And so the model that Scotty's laid out with whether it's 100 seconds or 100 minutes or 100 hours or 100 days or weeks or years or months or whatever, 100 years is tough. Take the 100 years back. That said, right, if you can measure, just that first 100 seconds, for me, that's, hey, I got to do this thing, and I'll spend an hour and a half putting it off. But if I sit down for the 100 seconds just to start on it, I'm going to bang it out in 10 minutes. I'll spend more time putting stuff off than actually takes to get done from time to time. Matt, do you ever experience that?
So one missing part of my story is right after I sold the lawn care company, after I got back from Jackson Hole, my good friend, his dad owned a wine and beer distributor. So he called me and said, one of our sales rep quit. So for 2 months between selling your lawn care and go back to school, do you want to take over this sales rep position? I just turned 21. So I had to memorize like 2,000 different types of wine like that. I mean, I became overnight a wine connoisseur. Mainly I just could sell it. One of the things that he said to me that's always stuck with me, but the single most important thing in your life is the very next step you take. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just the very next step you take. Doesn't matter how deep, how far, how whatever it may be. And I think going along with what you're saying, and Scotty, the whole premise of your book is I think the successful people are the people not afraid to take that next step. No matter how difficult, complex, or simple it may be, I think it's literally just that next step. And then I think you build repetitive habits. I mean, Terry, you mentioned, I'm just picking on you. You said it might take you an hour and a half. Well, if you can find a way to say, man, it took me an hour and a half today, tomorrow it's only going to take me an hour. I'm not saying you're going to get everyone right, every single next step right. But if you can start to shorten that cycle, say, I know what I need to do, I'm just going to go do it. That's I think the major difference between basically successful people and not. And you define success what it is, but it's doing what you need to do.
I couldn't agree with you more, man. It's keep moving forward. One of my people that I follow on LinkedIn a lot is a lady named Joy McAdams, and she was talking about having a bad day, and that years back it would have crumbled her a little bit, and she would have laid in lament. But now with her super growth mindset and her multi-triathlons and all the fun stuff she's doing, she's like, what's the smallest step I can do to keep me in the direction I'm going, right? What's the easiest, simplest thing? And I love that idea. And so I use the hashtag keep moving forward all the time, because that's what we need to do, right? Just don't, if you only lose if you quit or you didn't learn anything. So that's awesome. What's on the 2 year, right? The 100 week agenda. What's the next 2 years look like for you?
So I want to, there's a lot of different directions I can go. And I think number one, it's obviously, I want to live out my mission. Everything that I do is, I believe every single person has a story, and those stories are worth telling. So I try to live that out with my podcast. I try to live that out in the context of the business. I try to at least be a decent person and help do that for other people. But I think within what Wedge is trying to do is we're trying to basically blow up the industry of being the candidate flow management solution. So at the end of the day, if you need to find candidates, we can help you do that. If you need to vet candidates through the process, we can speed that whole process up. And so what we're trying to do is obviously there's a hyper focus, there's a growth. Let's go service the industries that we can. But if we can help companies get candidates in the door, candidates have a remarkable experience, and companies get a quick opportunity to effectively screen them, to hire them, or move them to the next stage. Not only is that a company that can make a lot of money, great. Obviously, at the end of the day, you have to do that to continue to support the business. But deeper than that, I think we can impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of lives through our platform. And so that's what we're set out to do, and we're fired up about it. Yeah, there's a ton of stressful days, but not every day is going to be good, and that's okay. You just keep moving forward. So,
keep moving forward.
Hey, Matt, can I ask a question?
You can ask anything you want.
You know, the rule of 100 is the first 100 seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months. And those transition points aren't like Cinderella. So it doesn't happen at the stroke of midnight, right? But, you know, interestingly enough, you know, you went through that lawn mowing business called, I got it here on the screen. Where is it? Sorry, next one down. Is it Stony Point?
Stony Point. That's good.
Stony
You've done
Point.
your research.
Well, LinkedIn did it for me, so
exactly.
But hey, listen. So the rule of 100, you know, and people go through this transition. In marriage, they call it the 7-year itch. And interestingly enough, you know, that didn't happen at 7 years at the stroke of midnight, right? Like Cinderella, it happens maybe at 5 years or 6 years or 7 years or 8 years, but it's about that 100-month mark, right? And that's what you did in the lawn business, right?
It's
6 years, 6.5 years. And the other thing I'll add on to that is right now, you've had your business for 7 years next month. So you're right on that. You're right on the 100-month mark. So right now, you're about to bust through, by the sounds of it, the rule of 100 on that 7-year mark. So in other words, anyone that gets past the 100-month mark, it's set in stone. That's them. That's their career. They're off and running, right? I mean, they're beyond. So I've been married now for 26 years or 27 years. So we got through that 7-year itch a lot.
How many verticals of 100 fits into 26, 27 years? So it's a lot of seconds. I'll say that.
You're following the same formula here with the rule of 100 perfectly. And you know what? You go through LinkedIn. How many people change jobs after 2 years? You're in HR now. You know it. How many people after 3 or 4 months, the first 100 days, quit the job because it's not working? And you did that with the wine business, you know? So, you know, so you've been following it perfectly. I love everything you're saying, by the way. It's just music to my ears.
Thank you. And one thing, actually, if I may, I appreciate you're the first person to call me on that. And I did something a year ago, and I wasn't necessarily intending to do this in any particular time. But as an entrepreneur, I get bored or get excited about new things. I'll put it that way, right? However you want to frame that. So
I
one
like
of the
that
things,
second one better.
exactly. With this business, stakes are higher. We have investors. We have money in. We've got bigger employees. We have larger reach on accounts, right? One of the things that I did, and I think I've done two things really well. One in particular is I brought an advisory board on for myself because I know I'm young in this game and having smarter people around, I think always is a good decision. But secondly, I brought on a company president about little over a year ago. So right about the 6-year mark, it just kind of happened to line up. I wanted to bring in somebody in the organization that I think could take it to a further level than what I could have done. Not because I'm not capable of it, but I think somebody who's done it in the past, somebody who can basically call it a little gray hair, who I think has the skill set to help the organization go to the next distance. Not because I don't think I'm capable of doing it, but to kind of come alongside what we're doing. And I think that to me has been one of the better decisions, and it happened to fall about the 6-year mark, right? And it was interesting. And again, it's not that I'm phasing out a wedge. In fact, I'm doubling down on wedge. But it was a new sort of vitalization to what the business is, and my role totally changed now that I'm not running the day-to-day, if you will, because we brought in a company president to do it. So it's been a fascinating change. I'm not saying it's been perfect, but that's been one of the best decisions I've ever made.
It's you're talking about business judo and time duplication, two of the other systems in the book. So you know what? All successful people use systems, and you're a perfect example. So anyway, just well done, Matt.
Well, thank you. I think Terry said it earlier. It's a little bit of dumb luck, or kind of dumbly tripped into it. However you want to phrase it, but we'll take it.
Action.
It's the only way to. It's my second favorite kind of luck, man. Dumb luck.
Exactly.
It's my second favorite kind of luck. That's fantastic, Matt. It's exciting to watch and to see you grow. Right, I'm a cheerleader on the sideline, going, "Go Matt, go Wedge!" Right, and there's just keeps being wins. I remember at the end of last year, in the middle of the raise that you were kicking off. The numbers you were talking about are twice, 2.5 times what we were looking at back then, right? So it's you're doing a lot of the right things every single day, and it's amazing to me the more people that you can positively impact, right, in an altruistic way, the more that has a positive impact on your life too, in a selfish way, right? When I look at business judo, one of the systems inside of that's networking, and networking to me was always about selfish altruism. I'm going to go do a bunch of really good things for a bunch of good people because I know ultimately it's going to fall back on me, right? So they win, I win, we all win. That's another one, win, win, win. So it's really cool, man. What I started to ask earlier, we talked about the candidate feedback. What are the hiring managers telling you about Wedge? What's that sound like?
Yeah, well, first off, I don't want to let what you just said go underwhelmed. Yeah. So thank you. That means the world to me. And I had a chance to have on my podcast the first first chief human resource officer for LinkedIn. And one of the things that he said when they created the company was they wanted LinkedIn to be the place that you went to when you wanted to elevate your career. They knew everybody wasn't going to stay there forever, but they wanted to be the place that you went to so that you could, the very next thing that you took, the very next job you took, the very next company you started, you were elevated because of your experience at LinkedIn. And that's something that I want to own better than I do, but basically to say, look, I know we're going to have some amazing employees, and I know we're going to have some people that probably are going to be able to have a better opportunity beyond Wedge, and that's great. And I want to be a place, at least as at your home at Wedge, that we could help elevate your life, whatever it may be, to the next thing. And that's something that stuck with me to focus on. And so the fact that if that shines a little bit, or at least is seen a little bit, that means the world. So Terry, seriously, thank you for saying that. Cool. I think on the candidates on the company feedback, obviously there's hard data around. One of the things we want to focus on is reducing your time to fill, right? So if your time to hire or time to fill a position is, say, 60 days, right, from posting to that person starting, whatever that time crunch may be, if we can come alongside and we can help reduce that, we're doing our job effectively, and we can very, very clearly show you how much money you're saving, how much less time you're spending, whatever it may be. So certainly some things that we've heard that we'd like to hear, and our thesis has always been, can we help reduce your time to fill? And that's what we like to hear from companies, and we've heard a lot of that as well too. The other, interesting how you quantify it, but like I kind of came back to from the original idea, is we want to be a platform that allowed candidates to share their story above and beyond resumes and cover letters. Companies saying, man, the power that came from watching that video, for better or for worse, whatever it may be, that hearing that feedback shows that not only are we helping on the hard data lines, but we're actually helping sort of live out the mission of that storytelling, of giving people the opportunity to share their story or not to. So we certainly see quite a bit of that, which is awesome. And one of the, to be honest, we didn't know we were going down this path, but a really, really cool outcome is when you think about, so we play in the asynchronous or the on-demand video interview space. So one-way videos, different than live. You record it, somebody reviews it. You can take and you can share that video. So we're on a pretty unique path. At the moment you introduce somebody else to review a piece of information, you can reduce bias and discrimination. So we are actually going down a data-driven path that we can help reduce some of the negative bias and negative discriminations happening in the space by encouraging people to use asynchronous video interviewing, which is one of the coolest missions that I didn't know we were going to go down, but that's become a really, really, really cool path that we've stepped into. So I think there's a lot that we see from companies, but those would be three highlights that we get pretty fired up by.
I love the idea of unintended consequences, right?
Usually they're negative, but that happened to be a really good one.
Dumb luck, right? Usually they're pretty good, man, because I'm like, oh, that worked out way better than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. It's like every time I play golf, well, made contact. That's good.
We should play together. That might take a long time. We'll hit that 100 hours. That's very cool. I want to get to the wrapping up part, but before I do, one of the favorite things about the system, this Rule of 100, is the idea of onboarding, right? Onboarding clients, onboarding employees, onboarding just people, right? So, when a new employee shows up, that first 100 seconds, that first couple of minutes, you got to be warm and on fire and welcoming, and they got to be excited to be there because you're excited they're there, right? And then they go off and they do some stuff, and that first couple of hours, right, 100 minutes, check in and see how they're doing. And all of a sudden now you've got the first 100 hours, right? That 2-week period, you can really get an idea of where someone is or isn't and how they're going to get along with the organization. And Scotty would tell you that, by that first 100 day, or that first 100 weeks, 100 days, but that first 2 years, right? It's really kind of in or out in that timeline. Has that been your experience? Are you taking a look at things like that?
So it's interesting. There's a couple different ways I could go with this, but I think let's start with just first impressions and the first 100 seconds of meeting somebody. I think if you can get a quick win or focus on getting a quick win with somebody, whatever it may be, I think that's one of the greatest ways to start a strong relationship. So whether that's, hey, I got their name right, I repeated their name, so they heard me say their name out loud, right? Okay, great. That's nothing new. How to win friends, influence people. Great. Or it might be, Scotty, great. I've been to Australia. Let's talk about that for a hot second. Get you excited about something that you might get passionate about. But one of the things that I sort of obsess over, and maybe it's to a fault, but I sort of play a mental game in my head of how quickly can I get somebody to glow, right? Whether it's get them, and it's never something I'm talking about. It's always something they're talking about. Whether it's talking about a dog, a pet that they have, whether it's talking about a sport that they just play, whether it's hacking it on the golf course, whether it's a country that they live in, whatever it may be, I think if you can drive in that first 100 seconds towards a quick win with somebody, and then I think take that and just multiply that. So, right, over 100 seconds, go to 100 minutes. Okay, what is something in this conversation, if we're just going to have coffee, that we both can enjoy talking about? So I don't really care what the topic is. I just care that somebody's interested in the topic. I get really mentally bored if somebody's uninterested in something. So to me, if I sit down with somebody, it's how do we in the first 100 minutes, hour, coffee, beer, whatever it is, how do we start to dive into something that they might get interested in? And then I can start peppering them with questions, and that makes a very interesting conversation. Then you think about the first 100 hours. What's something that you can double down on or reinvent new that you guys can do together? If that's an employee, what's something that you know that they can offer value to the business, but they really enjoy too? Double click, double down, double focus on that. And then I think whatever it goes from first quick win, second building a relationship, third obsessing over a skill set or an outcome, fourth whatever it may be. I'm kind of making these up on the fly, but I think if you start to think about it in that sense, one, you're going to get a lot of people to like you. Secondly, conversation is going to be way more interesting. And third, you're probably going to get the outcomes you're looking for.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's funny you say that. The like up to the first 100 days is the introduction phase, right?
Is that okay? That's awesome.
So it's the
That's
introduction
cool.
phase, right? That's when things are happening really fast. It's fairly active,
Sweet.
right? And it's the same when you release a product. The first 100 seconds, the first 100 minutes, you're analyzing that product, right? You're doing the same checkpoints. Oh, this is working. Oh, that's not working. They're not clicking on it. Why aren't they clicking on it? You're responding, right? So it's the introduction phase. The second phase between the 100 days and the 100 weeks is your training and development and growth phase. That's where things really start to settle in. And then after the 100 weeks, it's that retention phase, that career objective stage when it comes to people. So there's 3 phases to it. So you're spot on. That introduction phase is so important. You get that right. And what did you say? Did you say exponential or something?
Yeah, it continues. I mean, I even think about like when you're in a new crowd of people, right? 4 or 5 or 6 people, and you say something under your breath and somebody laughs at it, right? All of a sudden that person very quickly is like, oh, I kind of like that guy, or I can get along, or that humor is funny. And you could say something kind of wrong right afterwards, but they still like you because of the first impression they just made. You got that quick win, you got that first, and I think that just kind of trickles down. And I don't think as humans we're as complex as we think we are. If you kind of get quick wins with somebody, you sort of naturally by default say, look, I'm going to give them the benefit of their doubt. Whereas flip side of that, you get something wrong, which I've done more times than right. You're going to sort of instantly get them like, I don't really trust what he has to say, or I don't believe in what he has. And I think the first 100 seconds then just builds upon itself. I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well said.
That's a great point. Matt, what else would you like to share? Tell us about you, or tell us about Wedge. Did we miss anything that you wanted to cover, man?
You guys nailed it. I probably talked faster than you needed to in 30 minutes, but you guys nailed it. I mean, Terry, I can single-handedly say when you talk about networking and connecting, you're one of the greatest that I've ever met. And I mean, for example, and I'm not just going to say that to blow wind up your skirt, but I mean this when I say, I mean, you made an introduction to Berta. Berta and I joined forces, connected to each other. She introduced me to 7, 8, 10 people that I've all become good friends with. And that started with you without any financial, nothing to gain other than just connecting good people that you knew were going to relate. So you truly live out the connecting with no strings attached that somehow is going to come back to benefit you, but that's not why you do it. You do it to connect good people. So I mean this when I say, like, you are the man when it comes to connecting and networking with people. And Scotty, obviously I'm stoked to be on here, and I'm fired up about the principles that you're building here. I didn't necessarily come on here to say that I live these out daily, but apparently there's some overlap here, which is pretty cool. So I'm fired up to dive in deeper. So thank you. So
hey Matt, even the one in System 1357's people, and you're talking about it all the time, right? People first, people over everything. What you want to do, what they want to do. Man, you're all over it. It's so, and this is why you've had success. You're following a system. Over time, you're going to get more documentation on that. Maybe share the stories as well, which is why you're on here today. But yes, you've been following a system, and it's been working for you. So keep following that. Keep doing whatever you're doing, right? So yeah, it's so good to hear. How long we've been going now? We've been going 38 minutes. So yes, we'll start to wrap up. It's been an awesome session. So Terry, anything else you need to ask, or want to ask Matt? Because he'd probably go for hours, right? But
yeah, Matt and I
could do for a while.
Yeah, we could do this again. What I want to thank you for the kind words, and with all due respect, Berta's the single best connector I've ever met. Right, and it's interesting when you're known as something, and then you meet somebody, and you're like, it reminded me when I had a 20-foot runabout boat, and then I went to a car dealership client who had a boat that had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms.
There's always a bigger boat. There's always a bigger boat.
Like, why? We can't have different words for these? So Berta's whatever the Bugatti of connecting. She's an amazing individual. So big fan of hers. So thank you for saying that. I just want to encourage people that are in and near the hiring space, that are in and near the candidate looking for workspace, to go and check Wedge HR out. It's not only what's new, it's currently what's now, and I am certain it's going to be what's next, man. You guys got a heck of a future in front of you, and I'm excited about that for sure.
Well, I'm fired up, and thank you for saying that, and obviously thank you for supporting the business too. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So they can find you, Matt Baxter, on LinkedIn. You put up all kinds of great content, win some awards here and there, go hire some cool people, do some traveling. So you're a good storyteller, man. It's obvious that you're interested in them because you share good ones too. Or they can visit wedgehr.com, right? Anywhere else you'd want people to find you? Oh, you have a book.
We have a book. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Terry said it more elegantly. I'm a little loud and obnoxious, however you want to swing it. But yeah, also I've got a podcast. It's called The Matt Baxter Show. Took an in-depth marketing company to come up with that name. But it's all about purpose, passion, calling. What gets people out of bed in the morning. I like to interview people just to tell cool stories about life. So they can find that too. But seriously, thank you. And obviously I appreciate the connection to the business as well too. So we're fired up.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, Scotty, anything you'd like to say? Wrap up?
Yeah, Matt, it's just so good to hear your story. Like I said, Terry said we've got to get Matt on. So here's Matt, and you've lived up to all the expectations and hype. So it's so good. It's funny. I say in the book that all the successful people I meet, say the same sort of thing, but in their own ways. And so you've said basically all the five, even the sugar and cream system at the end. You talked about. You didn't even know you were doing it. So it's a bit of an awakening for some people. But it's funny. We had Phil Klein on for the insurance brokerage in Detroit, I think it is. Anyway, I just sold 10 books yesterday to another insurance company in Brisbane, in Australia, who uses the book to do team development and exactly what you were talking about, how you develop your team and stuff. So it's interesting to see how things are going globally. In your book, when you actually step up and put that on paper, it's such a big achievement, isn't it?
It's I got super fortunate that we had a couple guest authors help write some chapters, which is one of the coolest things. But actually getting a book out there when I wasn't the best academic student, I'll promise you that. Getting a chance to write and be on the other side of things, it's a really cool feeling. So starting block for sure, and hopefully there's many more to come.
So well done on the success of your business. Well done on the book. Well done for setting yourself up for the future. By the sounds of it, you're doing all the right things. You're making all the right noises. So well done, mate. It's been such a pleasure to have you on today. On that note, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to wrap up as a final take home for everybody. Anything else you'd like to add?
I mean,
what's your golden tip?
Unknowing it, I think I fully endorse everything that you guys are obviously putting out there from the book standpoint. I'm not just saying that to say that, but I think to kind of combine, I think the context of the book and something that Terry said, and I think something I said a little bit earlier, but find something you enjoy and just take a step towards it, whatever it may be. And I think the biggest step that you can take is an important one. And obviously if you continue to do that, follow up every 1,000 or 100 seconds, 100 minutes, 100 hours, whatever it may be. I think that's something worth living by. So I think there's a lot of people out there that just have one thing that they want to go do or one little step that they want to take and they just don't do it. And I think the people who live life fully or are passionate or fired up or whatever it may be, I don't think you find purpose or passion just by sitting there. I think you find it by taking a step towards something. And so if you have a chance to do it, I would encourage you to. So
music to my ears. Any final words from you, Terry?
I say be a consistent step taker. I'm all for it, man. That's it.
I love it.
Just one foot in front of the other. Keep going. Keep growing.
I love that.
All right, music to my ears. All right, everyone. On that note, next week we'll be talking about sugar and cream, which is another system. So I'm not sure. We haven't actually put it live yet, so I'm not sure when I'll put it live, but look out for that. Same sort of time, same sort of channel. But meantime, Matt, and thank you very much for ordering the book. Who's that? That's I can't quite read it. I haven't got my glasses on.
Brandon Chambers.
Brandon, thanks very much for ordering the book. It's been selling all over the world. The USA, Canada, India, UK, even Spain, and obviously Australia, New Zealand. So happy. But anyway, look, we're looking forward to next week's session, Sugar and Cream. You'll like that one too, Matt. Definitely. So you're all over it.
It's all sugar.
But meantime,
we're gonna do that. We're actually taking a little different day next week. We're gonna be doing it on the 14th, but at that same 7 o'clock hour. I'm doing a training or a keynote speech on Wednesday, so I'm gonna be otherwise occupied at our normal time.
okay, we'll roll it. So we haven't put it live yet,
Yep.
so that's no problems at all. All right, everyone.
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming, and we'll see you all on the next one. And thank you once again, Terry, and especially you, Matt, for all your insights.
Perfect.
See you, everybody. I'll end the live.